Jimmy Kimmel, now the GameStop populist rebellion is now a Russian. It's a Russian. It's part of the Russian conspiracy. I can't even deal with this. I'll turn it over to Jack Posobiec.
Yeah, well, I have a question for Jimmy Kimmel. Is Chuck Schumer writing your monologues again, Jimmy? Remember this. Back when Obamacare, where they were talking about this and they were talking about all this stuff, it actually came out that Jimmy Kimmel was getting talking point help from Chuck Schumer's staff. So my question for you, Jimmy, the running dog of the hedge funds in all of this, is are you talking to Chuck Schumer's staff again? Did Chuck Schumer's staff ask you, the king, by the way, of insider trading in New York, did they ask you to call the Reddit guys a bunch of Russians, right? Those guys are still in there on Reddit. You go to Wall Street Bets right now, you can see every single one of them are holding on with their diamond hands to GameStop. They're looking at AMC. They're not going to silver. CNN and all these guys, CNBC, are trying to say they're moving to silver. You go in and look, there's over 600,000 live on the Reddit with a total community of 8 million subscribers. They're saying we're not going anywhere. We're not moving into silver. We're holding on with our diamond hands. We're not letting go. GameStop, AMC, to the moon.
Okay, let's bring in Boris Epstein now for a market check. Hey, Boris, today Charlie Gasparino, I think, gave an interview to Mediaite where he said he's sick and tired of hearing about the populist element of this, that this is overblown, it's too simplistic, that the Reddit army there, the 8 million that are in that, and 600,000 that are in the watching in the live chat right now on Reddit, are really not populist, that this is over simplistic. What do you say to Kimmel and to Charlie Gasparino?
Steve, great to be with you and all the Patriots at the War Room, Jack Posobiec, of course, Raheem, and the MAGA Brain Trust that are your viewers and listeners. In terms of Charlie Gasparino, I think his perspective is about as real as his Pulitzer Prize nomination. And we all know that that was BS. So Charlie is obviously now part of the elite, part of the establishment, and he doesn't like what's going on when people take their agency into their own hands, their finances into their own hands, and it's very disappointing. In terms of Jimmy Kimmel, everybody knows Jimmy is a total clown, and if he's talking about Russian disruptors, maybe he's talking about me, because we came here when I was an 11-year-old chubby Jewish kid, and then was called a Russian spy, but by the Democrats and the brainiacs like Eric Swalwell, Jackie Speier, and others. So that's what we're dealing with these liberals like Jimmy Kimmel. What's really happening with the market is GameStop, which I still own, was down today over 30%. AMC was down, Nokia was down, BlackBerry was down. But again, as Jack just said, if you look at what's going on the chat rooms, what's going on Twitter, what's happening on Reddit is that there is a decision, there's a statement to continue to hold to the stock, and the stocks have moved. They were down significant double digits late last week, especially when Robinhood stopped trading in them, and then they were back up. So there's a continued hold here, which actually suggests that this is not some short-term speculative move, but a decision by these investors, by these people who have the right to invest, to continue holding the stock. As to silver, very interesting. We did not see a significant move in silver, and silver is actually either flat or right about or down by a little bit for the last 30 days, including today's move. So a lot of that chatter over the weekend did not materialize. Interesting to know where it came from. Did it come from those who wanted a big move into silver, or were there really folks who were actually contemplating it? But as I shared with you over the weekend, Steve, a lot of that discussion about silver was really based on potentially holding physical silver. And as we realize, that is very hard to do. So that's what's going on with markets today. Very interesting start of the weeks, very interesting start of the month. But there is a decision to hold on Reddit, on Twitter by the Wall Street Bets crowd.
Okay, I want to turn now to the trial of the century that's going to start next week, and I want to get to the legal team in a second. But I got to go back to this article of which the War Room plays a part in, and particularly this audience, because the audience is really what's important here. It's 10,000 words. I think 4 or 5 Pulitzer Prize winners are among the, I think 7 or 8 people that wrote it.
Is Charlie Gasparino
it goes on it. No, Charlie Gasparino is not. But they go on and on. It's page 1. It goes on forever. I think it's 6 pages internally to the Times. They go chapter and verse about why this is a big lie, why this is all phony. Everywhere from Paxton in Texas had his brief written by the White House, to everything that you guys did on the legal side was all either incompetent, amateurish, or just are illegal. But they never address any of the facts. They never take on any of the particular facts in Wisconsin, the ICs, the early voting. They don't take on any of the situation in Georgia, and never address anything in Arizona. So what's your sense? And this is obviously laying the groundwork. This is the research department for the Democratic, the prosecution, right? Because the prosecution is going to hit Trump from two angles. One is going to be a very emotional that Jamie Raskin put together, and I'm sure it's got videos and all types of things about President Trump riling people up in the past. But understanding they can't make that case to directly connect the speech and the rally to the incident, because the incident had started, I think, some of it even before people were up there, even before he took the stage. That they've got to go back, and now they got to set the predicate November 4th for 77 days, and the New York Times does that. How would you, being as you were there for all of it, and knowing that you know the facts, how would you counter that?
Steve, I'll tell you this. Whenever the New York Times puts out one of these Old Testament combined with New Testament sized articles, stories, honestly, I largely ignore it. It's what happened with the president's taxes, when the New York Times apparently stole a version of the president's early tax returns and try to somehow put it together with other information that they did not get legally. It was total nonsense and nobody cared. I think this is the same thing. This is the New York Times putting out the Democrats' perspective that there was no voter fraud, and it's not an honest perspective. The Democrats know there was voter fraud in Wisconsin. You just mentioned the indefinitely confined votes, the mail-in absentee ballots, which did not have signatures on them. Overall, over 200,000 unlawful ballots in Wisconsin, over 400,000 allegedly unlawful ballots in Georgia. Of course, they're not going to talk about that. They're going to try to piece together a lot of these, smoke and mirrors connections, and how this was a big conspiracy. All this was an insistence by President Trump and his team, which I'm proud to have been a part of, that we need election integrity in this country, and that we have laws in this country. We have a constitution in this country with mandates under Article 2 that it is state legislatures which determine how elections are held for president. And the New York Times wants to put together a bunch of this nonsense. Let them. Maybe some of their readership will be interested. I predict that article will, if it's not now, will soon be not behind a paywall, because they'll be begging somebody to read that whole thing.
Now, Boris, I want to jump in here right now with some numbers on this to give people a perspective. Some numbers out of the heartland that just came out today on Message Inc. This is Josh Hawley talking about the state of Missouri, right? So right in the heartland, really known as that sort of battle space, that battleground for the country. For likely voters, do you agree that Josh Hawley was within his constitutional duty to object to the Pennsylvania election results? 57% of likely voters agree, including 47% strongly agree, and that's 61% with independents.
Wow.
Now,
how much with independents?
61%. That's the heartland. Now,
you mean you add? Okay, good, got it.
Let's go down to the actual impeachment question.
Yep.
Do you favor or oppose? 58% oppose the impeachment, state of Missouri, including 54% strongly oppose. With independents, 61% of independents in the state of Missouri oppose.
61% independents, or when you add it up, it's 61%?
61% of independents.
Good Lord. Okay.
And with Republicans, it's 91%.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we continue to do this. Hang on for a second, Boris. This is why we continue to pound this. Raheem, I want to get you first. Daily Mail is breaking a story that the president's new team, Schoen, who I think is the lead lawyer of the two, I don't know, but it looks like he's the lead lawyer. Schoen just announced he's not going to argue anything about election fraud. He's just going to go back to the constitutional issues of due process. Mr. Raheem Kassam.
Then don't go. No, then don't show up. I mean, the constitutional things are obvious to everyone anyway, and they've shown they've already got those votes, right? There's already enough people who don't believe in this whole process, so don't bother. If you're not going to use the opportunity as an opportunity and rather just another reason to be on the defensive again, then don't go. Just empty chair it, let them have their little moment, because it's not going to change anything. What the public wants here, what the base wants here, is for finally us to have our say. Remember, the New York Times, in its mini novella, right, that it puts out, says after every single court thing that was heard, it was a failure. There weren't court trials about this thing. That's why you didn't get. And here's the thing. You want to talk about why the country's divided? You want to talk why there's so much pent-up anger and aggression? You want to talk about why, for instance, you have somebody going up on Bill Maher saying, hey, it's too politicized. We can't even get to the origin of a virus that is attacking our people. It's because we aren't allowed our day in court. So for the president's lawyers who are saying we're not going to argue the merits, we're not going to argue the evidence, we're not going to argue the case, you are not just a part of the problem here. You are complicit in the problem here.
Boris, we got about 2 minutes. I want to turn to you. Is the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is he the best guy to go up there, go in the well of the Senate, and make the opening 2 or 3 hour argument of overall the architecture of his victory, of what really happened and how this was stolen from him?
First of all, Steve, I'd like to make you an offer. I will give you the same amount that I've invested in the 4 stocks, GameStop, AMC, BlackBerry, Nokia, if you wear a jacket of the same design that Raheem is wearing today. I think you'd look great in it. So just something to think about during the break and between today and tomorrow. In terms of the president, yes, I absolutely believe the president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, the 45th president, is the one who is best to carry this out, who is best to make this presentation, and frankly, who will actually break through. We know the media is not going to want to cover any presentation on voter fraud, any presentation on election fraud, any presentation on dead people voting in Nevada and Georgia and illegal immigrants voting in Arizona. But if it's Donald Trump up there, they sure as well are going to be forced to do so. Now, is that going to happen? It doesn't seem that way to me based on everything that I'm hearing and everything you're seeing out of the new now legal team. I believe that the arguments have to be on 3 vectors. The unconstitutionality of the process. Yes, it's unconstitutional to have this sham of an impeachment trial. The fact the president in no way incited this, said peacefully and patriotically march. As you mentioned, Steve, the timing just doesn't line up. This was not incited. And then absolutely C, the deep election fraud, deep voter fraud that Americans believe happened in the 2020 election. The numbers that Jack pointed out, the 81% of Republicans who know that this election was stolen. We need to get that information. We need to get those facts out there because that is what, as Raheem said, the base requires. And what is the base? It's not something political. It's the lifeblood of the Republican Party.
Boris, real quick.
Lifeblood of the country.
Boris, real quickly, what's your social media coordinates? We got to pop. You got about 15 seconds.
Thanks so much. At BorisEP on Twitter, Boris_Epstein on Instagram, at BorisEP on Twitter, Boris_EPSHTEYN on Instagram. Stay strong. God bless. See you tomorrow.
Boris Epstein. We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to come back with Raheem and Jack, and I want to walk back through those numbers coming out of Missouri.